Hello out there. We're on the air. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. This is Jor, and we got a live audience today. We got Arnie in the house. Hope everybody's doing good. I got some jean shorts on today. It's a beautiful Wednesday here. The sun's shining. The coffee's hot. Maybe too hot. We'll see. But we got Bitcoin is the only option today on the daily Bitcoin journey. The show is about two things. Well, one thing combined into two. Actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. So if you're new to the show, if this is your first time here, welcome. If you're on YouTube, welcome. See you later, Arnie. If you're on the Zapdos streams, welcome. Bit of a slow start today. As we see in the chat here, Ian says he is late in honor of Trump. Don't worry. Almost. We were probably doing slightly different things before the show. But at least there wasn't any surprise special guests promised on this one. We had a special guest show up, Arnie, but there was no promise of it. So RJ's over in Zapdos stream. Letha is over there as well, who just zapped 420 sats saying happy hump day. Thank you, Letha. And I see a bunch of folks over here in the YouTube chat. Thanks for being here this morning. We got Johnny, we got Daniel, we got Ian, we got Zane, we got Adrian, we got Timber Crasher, Rock Roll, and we got Tommy D. It's a good, what a crew. What a crew for this hump day today. All right, before we get any further, let's give a shout out to some fountain boosters here. I probably don't shout out enough. I focus usually on YouTube and the Zapdos stream, but Fountain's been hot. So I just wanted to give a shout out to anybody who's been listening to these episodes on the Fountain app, because yesterday we got just about 2,000 sats, I think, for the show yesterday. I said yesterday twice there. Yesterday. So thank you for that. I forget who they were, but there wasn't any real substance to the message. I think one just said, keep doing what you're doing, keep up the good work, something along those lines. So if you're into earning free Bitcoin, which you should be, then make sure to check out the Fountain app. The daily Bitcoin journey is on there. And here's some free advice for you. Even if you've already listened to the show in the morning, if you caught the live show, turn it on later at night. Stream it for half an hour or an hour and earn some free Bitcoin. Crazy not to. We talked about that on yesterday's show in the second half about sats flow. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, the nice thing about both the Bitcoin Journeyman and the Living in the Future option there for people is that you can always go back and rewatch them. You unfortunately can't do that on Zapdos stream. I love having this option here. I love the functionality with Bitcoin with Zapstream, but you can't go back and watch them after. So yesterday's show, we were talking about the sats flow and how to be thinking about earning Bitcoin. And we're going to elaborate a little bit more on that today, but the Fountain app is an absolute no-brainer. I told people to create a list of 10 things that they can do every day that's going to earn them sats. 10 things. So first one, very easy one, the Fountain app. So thank you for the boosts over on Fountain. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to skip the metrics again today because honestly, I'm tired of saying the same thing over and over again every single day. The price has moved like, I shouldn't say that. It's gone up in the last month or so, but for the most part, she's been pretty steady. So what do we have here? We're currently sitting at block height 854, 810. 854,000 blocks have been mined since when? January 3rd, 2009, the very first Bitcoin block was mined. That was block height 1. So we're currently at block height 854,810. So in the last 15 years, that's how many blocks have been mined. Fees still incredibly low, 4 sats per VByte. The last Bitcoin miner to get the block was Spiderpool. And for their trouble, they earned a total of 3.18 Bitcoin. So you always have to keep in mind here that the subsidy, 3.125 Bitcoin every Bitcoin block, that's how much Bitcoin is created or newly minted, I guess. Not created. The Bitcoin are already created. We're just releasing them into the wild now. 10 minutes at a time, 1 block at a time. And the total fees on that were only 5 million sats for a total of 3.18. So congrats to Spiderpool. Better than Antpool. What's with all the insects? Spiderpool, Antpool. Not very creative here, Bitcoin. Anyway, so let's get moving on here. We're actually going to do the. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to show here. The hash price, or not the hash price, the hash rate. Apparently, we hit a new all-time high for difficulty. Is that true? Yes, it is true. New all-time high for the difficulty, which means how hard it is to mine a block, how much competition you have. And we hit an all-time high at 90, the terahash? 90 T. And we're just a little bit down from our all-time high for the hash rate. It looks like 724 was the all-time high. Yeah. So we're doing well. The network's doing well. I don't think the miners are doing that well. The hash price is pretty low. Rick says, have you smashed the like yet? Let's check. Because why wouldn't we? We do every day. We got to keep some consistency. Oh, they're low today. What's wrong? Do I need to change my hat or something? Turn it around? Okay. Let's do our free Bitcoin giveaway for today. Let's get it done early. I don't know if my account has been topped up here yet. We might have to pause this segment for a while until Adam fills us up. All right, we gotta focus here for a sec. Fuck. No, all right, we're on track. All right, well, while I'm doing this, make sure to get your phones out. Get your Lightning wallets open. Because we're giving away some Bitcoin. Add this to your free, your top 10 list of ways to earn Bitcoin. And you should be doing daily thumb routines to make sure you're the first one to hit it. All right, here we go. Oh, we got to get it on screen. So if you don't know, if you're new to the show, every single day we give away some Bitcoin. It could be 500 sats. It could be 1,000,000 sats. These sats are courtesy of Bitcoin Well. They're a sponsor of the show. And of course, Bitcoin Journey. Because technically, I could just claim all these myself. So I gotta claim myself as a partial sponsor here. So here we go. Here we go. We're tossing the coin into the wishing well, and somebody here is gonna win some Bitcoin. So get your phones out, point it at the screen. Here we go. Uh-oh. This isn't looking good. So I just redeemed points and nothing happened there. That's tough. Should we try it again? It says USA temporary downtime, an hour. Okay, well, we're going to try it again here. This is our last toss into the wishing well. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, we'll give it a sec here. Maybe it's formulating. Imagine if this was the 1 million one. Oops. That's a tough look for the show. We just burned our last 2 tosses, and we got nothing from it. What do we do here? Well, we'll still give Bitcoin Wall a shout out. I guess. Thanks for the tosses there. We must have missed the well. I think that's what happened. I threw the coins, but they missed the well. So anyways, we'll have to, maybe tomorrow we'll double up. We'll do 2 tosses tomorrow. I'll talk to Adam right after the show here and see what the heck. I'm wondering if that's like a browser issue. Like, I don't know. It seems like with the pop-ups and stuff, there's usually some issues, because we had that happen last week or the week before too. And I had to give away the sats, but I'm not doing that today. I can't afford it. My Path to Fire says, I saw you were on Fountain. Yep. Daily Bitcoin Journey is on Fountain. So I upload it there every day. It's another option, actually. If you're you want to catch the full show, I upload the full show there every day. Okay, let's get to some news here after that. That was tough to be a part of. We lost all our viewers after that colossal screw up. Okay, so this is kind of wild. I don't pay attention to the stock market very much for obvious reasons. But as Wicked says here, this is nuts. The market cap of NVIDIA has dropped by over 19 million Bitcoin over the past 3 weeks. So you can see the chart there. It looks like we hit an all-time high in the beginning of July. And I shouldn't say we, because I do not have any NVIDIA stock. I think that even though NVIDIA has been one of the best performers, I would not touch that with any amount of money that I have right now, unless they buy Bitcoin. That'd be my only way of buying some NVIDIA. But I did not know that this was happening. It looks like that must be the market cap dropped from. No, that can't be right. I thought it was higher than that. Anyways, not good. Not good at all. The last 3 weeks, NVIDIA has been dropping. Everybody expected it. We just didn't really know when it was going to happen, because that was a bubble of all bubbles. So let's get to this next part here, which kind of explains why companies should be holding some Bitcoin. So this is Bill Miller. We watched Bill Miller the Fourth. And if you guys were watching the show last week, I actually called Bill Miller. I said his name was Bill Miller IV. But it is, in fact, Bill Miller the Fourth. So this is Bill Miller talking about why companies would want to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So let's listen to what he says, and then we'll talk about it. This guy was just at the Bitcoin conference as well. I think he was sharing the stage with, oh, hold on. With Eric Weiss. Eric Weiss? Weiss. I don't know if anybody can tell me the actual pronunciation of that. That would help me a lot going forward. All right. Here it is. Here's Bill.
Now, certainly, if more companies decide that they want to buy and never sell Bitcoin, it's going to increase the demand relative to the fixed supply. We all know that would work in favor of the prices. But what problem is solved by companies doing that? I mean, I just don't know how many companies are really going to want to place that sort of an asset on their balance sheet and have that be an aspect of their story.
Well, I think it's worth asking what their alternatives are. And the alternative is you can buy a treasury asset that whose white paper says it's going to depreciate at 2% a year at least. If you look back at the history of the Federal Reserve, they've printed approximately 6% supply growth over an incredibly long period of time. 6% supply growth, that just happens to correlate with the long-term growth rate of nominal GDP. What do you know? So here's the real deal. Bitcoin is the new global denominator for capital. So the problem it solves is you don't have all of these politicians running around trying to curry for favor and redistribute wealth and change taxes and change all sorts of things. You get what you get. You get 21 million Bitcoin and that's it. And so, we're incredibly optimistic about it over the long term as these dominoes continue to fall in favor of Bitcoin.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Bill Miller, IV. Indeed. So what he's saying there is pretty important, actually. He's saying that, and that's what this show is named after today. Bitcoin is the only option. It is, because your other option, as he said there, not only he's talking about companies here. So companies typically, when they make money, they have some profits, they keep it in their retained earnings, and they need a place to store that, their excess capital. A lot of companies will pay it out to their shareholders if they have an excess there, but a lot of companies like holding it, an asset on the balance sheet. And so he's saying that most people hold the treasury asset, which is the dollar. Most people just hold it in cash. And I've seen this firsthand. I worked in the accounting industry for 10 years. And so I saw a bunch of different financial statements between small businesses, farms, you name it, everybody. And the majority of people were holding cash. With farms, obviously, you have a pretty large piece of your balance sheet tied up in land, which is good. Land is a good asset. Land is very similar to Bitcoin. And I think that all farmers right now, they have physical scarcity in land. But I think that farmers should and will be looking at Bitcoin as a digital scarce asset on their balance sheet. But anyways, for the most part, the companies held cash as their reserve. And as he talked about their white paper, fiat doesn't really have a white paper, but the Federal Reserve, the central banks, they intend to create 2% new every year, new fiat. But he said that it's been more like 6. And I'd say it's been more like 15, or at least the amount that they tell us about. That's what you have to keep in mind there. Even if they say it's 2, 5, 10% growth, that's what they tell us. And I think if you're a logical person, you know that there's a lot of things that aren't told to us. And keep in mind that these places have also never been audited before. So when you're starting with that as your foundation for your system, you're in trouble. So he called Bitcoin the new global denominator, I think, for capital. And he compared it to fiat. But you also have to, the next part of this is for the individual. That's for the companies. He's saying that everybody should be holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet because it's not melting like fiat is. But from an investor's standpoint, and why I believe Bitcoin is the only option for individuals and for companies, is because think about all these companies, they're holding the fiat, they're earning fiat. They're still 100% in that world. And if you believe that there's a collapse coming, and if there's the melting ice cube, as Saylor calls it, then all those companies are going to wash away with it. There's really there's about 5 companies, I should say, that are holding Bitcoin. And I think that if you're somebody who has a pension, if you're somebody who has any sort of retirement savings in like a registered account, whether that's RSP, TFSA, whatever vehicle you have it in, wherever your retirement funds held, you should be allocating all of that to Bitcoin. You don't have to take it out tomorrow. Don't pay a bunch of fees. Don't pay a bunch of taxes. Just talk to your advisor, talk to whoever runs your retirement account and say, I want to be allocated from these to these. And you got MicroStrategy, you got Semlar, you got the ETF itself. I always forget to talk about Tesla. But Tesla, to me, I don't have any Tesla, so this is a very unbiased opinion on it. But Tesla, it seems like a pretty good option as well, because you have to remember that they're holding a bunch of Bitcoin. And if you watched yesterday's show and we talked about John G. Trump and Nikola Tesla, and if you think about it, take it one step further, think about where Elon's got all of his funding from, the Trump administration. And Trump talked about the EV, the electric cars. He said that there's a place for them, but it's not going to be a mandate. So I would strongly look at Tesla too. I think that they did a stock split last year, the year before, and their prices, the price of the stock, I was looking at it yesterday, is very reasonable. I think it's like $250 for a stock. But you also have to keep in mind, just like Bitcoin, anytime you're looking at stocks, you have to look at the current supply, the outstanding shares. Because with MicroStrategy, there's 17 million shares outstanding, 17 million with an M. With Tesla, I think there's over 1 billion shares outstanding. So moral of the story, everything else outside of Bitcoin, the companies who refuse to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they're just going to keep melting away forever until they realize that. And I think that a lot of companies will realize that too late in their journey. All right, let's catch up on some chats here. Pam, good morning. It's a great photo. It looks like a sheep. Is it live on Fountain too? No, it's not live on Fountain, unfortunately. I don't know how to do that yet. I'm a premium member on Fountain. I'm just not sure how to go live on Fountain, but that would be cool. Maybe I'll look into that somehow. I'll just have to maybe put that's not how you do it. I don't know. Not live on Fountain though, but I have seen live shows on there, so it must be possible. Ian says Dubai has created land. Actually, they can create more Bitcoin. That's the thing you have to keep in mind about scarce assets versus non-scarce assets. Shares, stocks, all that, very non-scarce. They want to, if their stock price goes up, just like MicroStrategy has, they do a stock split, which doesn't really, a stock split doesn't, and this is where a lot of people get it wrong. And I'm actually going to talk about another question here that I saw online. So this is a good segue into that actually. But you have to keep in mind here that if you, with the scarcity, if you have a stock that does a stock split, they're not creating new shares. I guess they are, but they're not issuing new shares. The pie itself, the size of the pizza has not changed. They've just cut it into smaller pieces, right? There's a big difference there between making the pizza bigger and cutting the pizza into smaller slices. That's essentially what MicroStrategy did. They didn't issue more shares. They just cut their shares in smaller pieces. They went from, it was a 10-to-1, I think. So for every one share you had a MicroStrategy, you now had 10. So they created new shares, but it's hard to explain, I guess, in a way, but I think that the pizza analogy is best. And that's the next part I want to talk about here, because there's people who worry about that with Bitcoin too. So where is this? Let's get to this. This is, somebody posted this. This was their fear about Bitcoin. Let me find it. So this was a tweet from Bruce Fenton. All right. So he says, there's a possible path for Bitcoin that I fear. We see wild highs, massive adoption by sovereigns and institutions. The Bitcoin is mostly custodied by large banks. Early adopters and current holders all become fabulously wealthy. That's true. Bitcoin sits alongside the US dollar and other fiat as a boring balance sheet item. Fiat keeps on being fiat and little in the world changes. Human freedom doesn't advance. And then he says, number go up is important, but it's not all this is about. So Bruce is still missing the fact that, yes, that is true. And it could happen, and it probably will happen. He's saying that Bitcoin is essentially just going to become an asset that these big institutions and countries hold on their balance sheet. That's what he's saying. And he's saying that fiat's going to keep being fiat. Human freedom doesn't advance. Number go up is important, but it's not everything. So what Bruce is failing to understand here about Bitcoin is that it doesn't really matter if that happens. It doesn't. What does that hurt? That actually increases its value. If countries are holding Bitcoin as like their number one savings vehicle, that means it's incredibly valuable. So what's the problem there? It does not matter if everybody's using it. It doesn't matter if everybody has a Bitcoin wallet. That's not the point of this. The point is that they can create all the fiat currencies they want. They can create all the altcoins that they want. It does not matter. Bitcoin is a scarce asset. And if you can value everything based on that, everything is accurate. You have a fair starting point, an equal starting point for everybody that nobody can manipulate, nobody can alter, and nobody can create more of. That's the key there. It doesn't matter what it's used for. It matters that we have something fixed to measure everything else against. That's the point of Bitcoin. And I think I replied to it saying that imagine how valuable it's going to be if that happens. And it still could be a currency. They're not going to lock all the Bitcoin up. That wouldn't make any sense. And they couldn't anyways, because they'd have to take it from us. But he said, well, then it takes away the currency aspect of it. And I said, no, it doesn't. Because what did I say? I said, if you had a car and I wanted to buy that in Bitcoin, and all these countries, all these big institutions have recognized Bitcoin as their number one savings vehicle, the number one store of wealth, then wouldn't you want some of that? And if I paid you in Bitcoin for that car, that's a currency. So, people are very concerned about the fact that we're going to have Bitcoin and we're still going to have fiat, but that's bound to happen. That's exactly what Trump wants to do. Is the US dollar isn't going to go away here. They're just going to back it with a real fixed asset like we used to do with gold before 1971, except way better, because we can see how much Bitcoin they have. We could not see how much gold they had. We cannot create more Bitcoin like they could just create more gold. This is a pretty familiar analogy on the show, but just think about gold. If the price of gold shot up tomorrow from 2,000 to 10,000, what would happen? There'd be a bunch of new gold mining companies pop up because all of a sudden it's a lot more profitable to be mining gold. So what would happen after that? The supply would increase. What would happen after that? The price would drop back down. That's economics. And you can't do that with Bitcoin. If the price of Bitcoin went from 60,000 to 600,000 tomorrow, there's nothing that anybody can do about it. It's a fixed asset with a fixed, scarce asset with a fixed supply and a known schedule. So we couldn't just go out to the mountains and find more Bitcoin. So the demand might not ever catch up with the supply. Unlike gold, where you just create new supply to meet the demand. And eventually, once that happens, the price starts falling back down. So it's important to realize the fact that it's not all about the entire world having access to Bitcoin, which hopefully they do. But the point here is that we start valuing everything with a fixed asset instead of, as we talked about, an inflationary 2 to 6% every year. Unknown. We have no idea how many US dollars are out there, and we have no idea how much they're going to be printing in the next couple of years to pay off $35 trillion worth of debt. It's an absolute no-brainer at this point. They're not even comparable. There's and it really it bothers me that it's taking people this long to figure it out. It really does. Even I've talked to so many smart, intelligent people in the last couple of years about Bitcoin. They're interested in it, but they still can't wrap their head around it. And I get it because it's so different than the system that we were born into. But fuck. Watcher. When skateboard. What the heck does that mean? When skateboard? I don't know. I tried skateboarding as a kid. We used to do the jackass stuff. It wasn't for me. I'm not a skateboarder. What else we got here? I see some comments over in the Zap stream. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if there's anything worth talking about here, or relevant, I guess, to this convo. My path to fire says land is usually pretty valuable because of zoning restrictions. Yeah, I mean that's the one thing about the land is that the other thing about land too is that you can actually own land. If I stop paying, even though I own this house that I'm sitting in, if I stop paying my property taxes this year, do I own my house anymore? Are they gonna take it into foreclosure because I didn't pay my property taxes? Yes. So do I own my land? I don't know. I don't think so. Do I own my Bitcoin? Yes. Unless somebody can hack into my brain or find a way to get the 12 words into my wallet, or 24 words, 25 words, whatever it is, I don't know. You'll have to figure that out. If you can get past Arnie into my house. Oh, he's gone. But yeah, that's the difference. I mean, you look at any asset, look at the characteristics of it, look at the supply of it, look at everything, look at the inflation rate. There's no asset, nothing that even comes close to Bitcoin right now. And it's really only a matter of time before people figure that out. It's taken pretty long, I'm not going to lie. But you also have to factor in how many hours you put in. How many hours do you think you put into Bitcoin before you had full conviction over it? I'd say a lot. Not like kind of interested, not like buying some, but like full conviction over Bitcoin. Like Michael Saylor says 100 hours. I think it's probably closer to 1,000 hours. And people don't even have time to make supper nowadays. They eat McDonald's or they eat Wendy's or Chick-fil-A. They don't have time to make food even nowadays. Do you think that they have 1,000 hours just to put into learning about a new currency? That sounds like the most boring thing ever. So, I mean, it makes sense. But anyways, I see Chris over in Zap.stream. Good morning, Chris. I see Hugh says good afternoon here at least. Yeah, it's pretty early here, 8:46 here. My path to fire, I missed some zaps here. Thank you for the zaps. We got one for 121 and one for 69. All right. Sorry, there's just, I'm having a really hard, I talked about this on the show yesterday. I'm having a pretty hard time keeping up with all the comments here in the chats by myself. So here's the thing. We're going to fire this up starting today. If you want to guarantee a question or a discussion being talked about, head over to zap.stream and just zap any amount, because it shows up here. If you leave a comment with a zap, then I'll see it. But other than that, I cannot promise anything. There's just too much. There's too much to do here. And I apologize for that, but that's just the reality of things. Okay, so let's talk about, there's one more massive piece of news that we're not even going to have time to talk about here. I'll bring it up quickly. Because I want to watch this video as well. But Russia legalizes Bitcoin for international trade to bypass sanctions. So in a significant legislative move, Russian lawmakers have passed a bill permitting businesses to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in international trade. This development is part of Russia's strategy to circumvent Western sanctions imposed following the invasion of Ukraine. The new law, expected to take effect in September, aims to address delays in international payments, particularly with key trading partners like China, India, and the UAE. I got to get this when skateboard comment off the screen here. So let me say that again. The new law, expected to take effect in September, aims to address delays in international payments, particularly with key trading partners like China, India, and the UAE. Okay. Makes sense to me. So those are pretty big countries. Russia, China, India, UAE, going to be trading back and forth with Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin's going to be. It's not going to just be used by us. That would never, if it was only used by us, The price will go down from now. So this is what's going to happen. All these countries who are currently, well, outside of Russia, who's been imposed, their sanctions have been imposed. But outside of that, like, people have had to hold US dollars, and that's what they trade in. That's what kept the US in power for this long. And that's why they would threaten all these small countries like Venezuela, like Russia, not a very small country, but that's what they did. They would say, you're safe as long as you use our dollar to trade. And why do you think the US dollars held its power for so long? Because they had that bullet in their gun saying, do this or else. But now they don't need to do that anymore. And the thing that was holding the US dollar up was the velocity of it, that these countries were required to buy US Treasury and hold it on their balance sheet until they wanted to trade with it. They would, when they're selling oil, they would get US dollars. When they're buying oil, whatever it is, they're using US dollars. They don't have to do that anymore. Bitcoin is available now. And it's the part of this too, is they said, what was it? Aims to address delays in international payments. So think about that. Think about your perspective as somebody in Russia who's buying and selling oil with other countries. And you get your shipment of oil, you write them a check, or you send them probably a bank wire. It wouldn't be a check, but you do a bank wire, and think about how long that takes. Think about how many parties are involved with that transaction. And especially when you have the US dollar, the US coming in and saying, you can't do business with Russia anymore. And they basically cut them off of the SWIFT system. So think about how annoying that would be to send a payment and have to wait a couple of days for it to finally settle. And you have too many things in the way there. Now you have Russia, you have China. China sells whatever, something to Russia. Russia sends Bitcoin. It's there in 10 minutes. There's no other parties involved. It does not sound like a better system. So just if that catches on, Bitcoin might be fairly valuable. All right. We're 40 minutes already. But I do want to watch this video. It's 4 minutes long, but it's very informative. I watched it this morning. What else did I have to talk about today? Oh, yeah. So this is called the fourth turning in 4 minutes. And I've actually been hearing quite a bit about this through the Bitcoin community. I think it was Jet. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he was talking about this the other day on a show. Jesse Myers, I think it is. The only reason I don't like him is because he was talking shit about Trump. But anyways, this is what he's been talking about, the fourth turning. Was it him? Doesn't matter. But essentially, they're talking about history and where we're going. And 80-year chunks. We've talked about 50-year cycles, 100-year cycles. This one focuses on 80 years, kind of split in between 4 chunks of 20 generations, essentially. So you got boomers. I don't know what was after that. Millennials, and then Gen Z now. What was after that? We'll watch. Anyways, this is very interesting to me because we'll talk about it after, because I got a few things to discuss on it. So here we go. Let's watch this. Explaining the fourth turning in 4 minutes.
History repeats itself in 80-year blocks called saeculum, but we'll just call them history blocks. Not exactly 80 years. This is history, not math, but roughly the span of a human lifetime, maybe 80 to 90 years. Within these 80-year history blocks, we have 4 turnings of around 20 years each. We usually call them generations. This book calls them turnings. Turnings are sort of like seasons, like spring, summer, fall, winter. Throughout our history, we've had these 80-year blocks, and the 80-year blocks have been remarkably similar to each other. We're in one now. The first turning, the first season, is a high, an upbeat era. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era. The third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era. And the fourth turning, well, sorry, but fourth turnings suck. The fourth turning is a crisis, an era of upheaval. We're in a fourth turning right now. During a high, the getting is good. We had the most even distribution of wealth during our high. You could work at a gas station and afford to buy a house. This high is the period that the MAGA hats refer to. We got Hank Williams and Elvis and Little Richard and the birth of rock and roll. We launched monkeys and men into space. This is when the Mustangs and Corvettes first came out. Our high ended with the assassination of John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. The high is not a high for everyone, of course. America still had a segregated South. Homosexuality was illegal and considered a mental disorder. The high is a period of conformity. The age of nonconformity and of social justice begins during the Awakening, our passionate era. During the Awakening, we had Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, acid, Vietnam protests and Vietnam itself, the Women's Liberation Movement, Stonewall and the Gay Rights Movement, great movies, great music. This is when the first Macintosh computer came out. The Awakening is a time of increasing individualism. This second turning, this awakening, ended with the re-election of Ronald Reagan in 1984. Things get messy during the third turning. During the unraveling, we got the fall of Soviet communism and the beginning of the Russian gangster state. The greatest musicians of the time sang about violence and decay in their deteriorating cities. The LA riots, OJ, the bombing of Bosnia, and the Columbine high school shootings on the same day, September 11th, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Our unraveling ended with the financial crisis of 2008. 80 years ago, in the last fourth turning, America had her Great Depression, then World War II. 80 years before that, the Civil War. 80 years before that, the Revolutionary War. Each generation's archetype is the characteristic that will define the generation in its prime, in midlife. The boomer archetype is the prophet. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs are boomers and prophets. Both predicted that one day everyone, not just big corporations and governments, would own a computer. Gates even predicted a crisis like COVID-19 5 years beforehand. The writers of this book are boomers and prophets. Gen X is the nomad generation. The quintessential Gen Xer, Elon Musk, builds things that move us from one place to another. Rockets, electric cars, hyperloops, nomadic devices. But the millennials, raised during the unraveling, will emerge as the hero generation during this crisis. These are the Parkland High students, the frontline hospital workers, and Malala Yousafzai. The book says millennials will be the World War II heroes of our history block. We don't know what Gen Z will do, but they will be an artist generation. From them will emerge the next Bill Withers, Toni Morrison, or Bob Dylan, all born during the last crisis, all from an artist generation. The history block before ours ended with World War II and began with the Civil War, 80 years prior. The history block before that ended with the Civil War and began with the end of the Revolutionary War, 80 years prior. Every 80 years or so, something big comes along and changes everything. And now we're at the end of our history block, right in the middle of our crisis. We are in the process of changing our world again.
Pretty interesting. Yeah, you know what? It was, and I don't want to spend too long on this because we're already 43 minutes here, but I'm horrible at this. To me, when I first got into crypto first, as I'm sure most people here did. And I got into it because it made sense to me that, you know, we live in this very high tech world already. Everybody's using the internet. Wouldn't it make sense to have currency that we can send at the speed of light without really anybody in between there? And I didn't really understand Bitcoin at that point. I didn't understand the decentralization of the Bitcoin network and how people vote with their nodes. I didn't understand that. It wasn't until I started looking at history and the monetary system and the ability to print money and create money, and when the Federal Reserve was created, and the Titanic and the wars and the 1971, the gold standard, how this all happened. It wasn't until I understood history that I could see why Bitcoin is so valuable. And so looking at things like that, to me, a few things come to mind. The first thing is that nothing lasts forever, right? We get very caught up thinking that the way things are today is how they're always going to be. I think that's just human nature, the recency effect. But nothing lasts forever. Everything changes. Everything in life is cycles. The seasons are cycles. Everything at a micro level to a macro level, everything is just a bunch of cycles happening over and over again. The other thing too is that based off of that, we're going from the crisis history block into the high, which I think that you would probably agree with. I agree with. That's starting in 2028. It could be now, though. They're not exactly 20 years. It's not like there's a countdown where we strike the minute into the next history block and all of a sudden everything's great. But I do think that once we get past this bullshit that we're going through right now, it is going to be a very high time for people, Bitcoiners and non-Bitcoiners. I subscribe to the theory that things are just going to slowly get better here over time. The reverse effect of the 1971 gold standard. At that time, nobody really knew what was going on. Nobody knew the impacts of taking us off the gold, or the world essentially off the gold standard when the US did that. Nobody understood the implications of that. We just watched it play out for the next 50 years. And that's where we're at the end of that right now. And I think that Bitcoin is going to have the opposite effect on that, where nobody really, the majority of people have no idea what Bitcoin is, why it's so valuable, and what it's going to solve. But everything's going to get better over the next 50 years. So 2028, the new history block, the new high starts. I like that he called the millennials the heroes there. I'm a millennial. So you're welcome. But no, it makes a lot of sense. Oh, there's the alarm. Better shut this door. But it makes a lot of sense to me. And the other thing too that I want to talk about in terms of that is that Bitcoin might change the landscape. It might not, though. And, I get really caught up in what's coming, and I have this vision for the future of what I think it's going to be, but that's not necessarily the case. I think that Bitcoin's going to eventually end wars, because it just doesn't really make sense when you take away the ability for governments to print money, to take on new debt, to buy weapons, to pay for all this bullshit, then it just disappears. And I do think that that's going to happen. So I'm curious to see what kind of impact that Bitcoin's going to have on this, because it's a totally different system here. But here's the thing. Here's the thing we have to keep in mind. And I have to keep this in mind too, because I see this future of the high, but then it's always going to stay like that. But we have to keep in mind that these cycles will probably repeat itself over the next 80 years. We'll probably have the high, we'll probably have an awakening, an unraveling, and then a crisis again. That's probably what's going to happen. It might just look differently under a Bitcoin standard. But you have to keep in mind here that forever in life, there's always going to be good and there's always going to be evil. Without a doubt, that's the one guarantee in life, that there's always going to be good and there's always going to be evil. It'll never be, there can't be good without evil. So you have to understand that even if they're unable to manipulate the money, they'll find a different way to do it, to screw things up, I think. As I said, until I saw this, I never really realized that that's a pretty likely scenario, is that, yes, we're going to have 20, 30 years of really good times at the end of this one. But what happens after that? What is the evil of the world going to impose on us that's going to send us into another cycle? Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen without a doubt. So it's important to keep that in mind, I think, just to kind of manage your expectations with everything. A lot of us might be gone in the next 30 years. Hopefully not me, hopefully not you. But some people watching here today will be gone. So the most important part there is that we have some really good times ahead. And I know it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, the news cycle, to bury yourself in that. But just understand that this is going to happen. This is nature. It's cycles. So we're heading into very good time. And if you're a Bitcoiner at this point, as the last thing we talked about there, you're going to be fabulously wealthy. And it's going to be tough for people. It's going to be tough for your friends and your family. But it's still going to be a lot better than it is today. I think that's what we have to keep in mind here. So I just saw a couple of chats here that I wanted to talk about. Sorry, this one's from Pam. It says, excuse me, if one cannot compare Bitcoin to any currency, then how can one determine how much Bitcoin to charge for a service or a product? Does one go with the price of the day versus the dollar? That's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding it properly. But how do you determine how much Bitcoin to charge for a service or a product? So here's my best guess at that is that. Sorry, I'm getting a call. My best guess is that everything's going to be valued in Bitcoin eventually. And it's not going to be in like 0.0005 of Bitcoin. It's going to be like 50,000 sats. So with that, you'll have the ability to pay in sats. You'll have an invoice that you can just scan. I think we're going to have a wallet that's Lightning compatible, that holds your Bitcoin, it holds your fiat, it holds your stocks. Everything's going to be tokenized within that wallet. And you can atomically swap back and forth with those assets in your wallet, your new wallet. And so if you want to pay in Bitcoin, you can. If you want to pay in fiat, you can. It'll automatically convert it to whoever you're buying it from or whoever you're charging from. We kind of have that ability now. You price something in sats and then you pay for it. And then whatever, it's up to the retailer or the business owner to decide how that they want that currency to come to them. So even if you pay in Bitcoin, they might set it up in a way where it automatically converts, it automatically sells to cash or fiat, and that's what goes into your bank account. So probably for the next decade or two, like there'll be businesses who do both. Some will want to hold Bitcoin, some will want to hold fiat. It really depends on who their suppliers are and what they're paying for their inputs in, right? That's how businesses are. We've never really had that scenario before, because you accept cash and you pay cash for your fiat for your goods. So if I'm a business owner, I'm paying for my hats, my hoodies in cash, and then I'm getting cash in return. So we've never really had that dilemma before, but now we're going to have the option. You're going to have a checkings account, which I think will be kind of like your fiat, your savings account, which will be in Bitcoin, and you'll have the ability to pay for anything you want to using Lightning. They'll all run on Lightning. And if you have a Tesla stock, you can instantly swap that for fiat or Bitcoin within your wallet. Like it's, it's not too hard to imagine that. And I'm honestly more surprised that we're not there yet, because we have the ability to do that now. Nil says, how do you think there will be a subunit to SAT one day? Yeah, absolutely. There'll be microsats, and then there'll be a subunit of that, because that's how it is with a fixed supply. When you can't increase the supply, you have to increase the units. Rob says, as a fellow Canadian, do you offer a service on instructions on how to safely store your Bitcoin? I'm skeptical of non-Canadian wallets. I've never sold, so I'm not sure of the process. Website to contact. Yeah, this is something that I don't really talk enough about probably on the show, is that I do offer this. It's, whether you want to learn how to properly store your Bitcoin, whether you want to set up a cold card, whether you want to set up multi-signature, we're going to have a really good option for this coming in the fall in terms of bulletproof Bitcoin setups. But for now, yeah, I'm happy to help you with that. Very reasonable too. I've looked at some of the prices of the other Bitcoin consultants, you'll call them, and the prices are fucking insane. Like $600 an hour to talk to somebody. I mean, at the same time, it's really priceless information, because if you went through the trouble of putting your life's energy and your life's work into an asset, you want to make damn sure that it's protected the best that it can be. So even though it's a lot, I think that it's still worth it. But I'm not in the business of ripping people off here. I think that if people want to learn how to do their Bitcoin security properly, I'm more than happy to help for a very reasonable amount in Bitcoin or in fiat. So you can get a hold of me. All my contact information is below the video in the show notes, the description. There's an email in there. There's a website. There's a NOSTR NPub if you're on there. So that's a great question there. All right, somebody zapped 1,000 sats. I'm trying to see who it is. It's not showing up. Okay, so we're going to actually cut the show off here. Still doesn't say. So, sorry, I can't see who. It's just showing me all NPubs now on Zap.stream. I can't see who zapped 1,000, but Daniel. There we go. It loaded. So thank you, Daniel. Daniel's part of the 1,000 sat club today, the only member of the 1,000 sat club today. So thank you, Daniel. So the next part of that I wanted to talk about is something kind of exciting, I guess. Depends on who you are, but we're going to start doing two things on the show. Mondays, we're going to be, all the proceeds from the Zap stream are going to go to a dog rescue fund of Bitcoin. I don't think this exists yet in the world, and I want it to. So we're creating it. So what I think we're going to have 4 or 5 people on this little committee. We're going to take all the Bitcoin from the Zap stream every Monday. We're going to put it into a wallet. We're going to take donations from NOSTR. We're going to put it into a wallet. We're going to sit on it for a couple of years. We're going to accrue, and then we're actually going to use it to help dog rescues, dog shelters. So that's going to be Mondays now. And then on Thursdays, all the zaps from Zap.stream, we're actually going to go to OpenSats development. OpenSats, I think that's what they're doing is incredible work. That they're doing something similar there, where they have I think a 9-member board, unpaid. They don't take any percentage of it, and it all goes towards open source development. So I think that this is a really good way for us, for this community, to help support that without, hurting anybody too much. Because me personally, I'm not in a position where I can just send a bunch of money to OpenSats, a bunch of sats. But I think as a community, if we make that an initiative, it's small, but it could make a difference. So that's going to be Thursdays on Zap.stream. That'll be tomorrow. So a few days of the week are going for my time here. But anyway, so we're gonna go to the next part of the show here. Once again, I apologize for missing some questions here, but that's okay. I see some pretty stupid comments in here, so I'm kind of glad that we missed it. But regardless, thanks for being here. You're helping the show with the comments, with the views in any way. So let's cut this off. We're actually going to do something a little different on the second part of the show today. So if you're interested in showing up, we probably got another, I don't know, we'll see how long it takes. But if you're interested, you can either join through the YouTube membership. It's $3 a month. You can use the Patreon, Living in the Future community, if you want a little bit more. You get access to the community, the Signal chat, and I would say that that's probably one of the best things you can do right now. I really believe that. Within that Living in the Future community, we have a mining group, we have a health and fitness group, we have a Sat-Earn group. There's so much information in there. There's so many links, so many resources. If you want to talk to other Bitcoiners, if you need help with something, I'm actually going to have another tier coming soon where you can, it'll include one session per month or whenever you want with me. So if you're somebody who's just getting into Bitcoin, I think it's going to be perfect for you to kind of get your foundation built properly. So that's going to be coming soon. But in the meantime, that's your 2 options. Or the third option is for free, because I want to have some paid options for people who want to support the show, but I also want people to be here if you want to be. So the second part of the show is always going to be on Zap.stream. So just go to your browser, type in Zap.stream, and you should be able to find the show right at the top of the page there. So this was a longer one today, but I don't mind doing that once in a while. All right. So goodbye, YouTube and everybody else. We're going to keep the show rolling here. So for everybody else, we'll see you right back here first thing tomorrow morning.